p.m. meeting on June 15th of the Portland City Council. Before we call the roll, as anyone who was here this morning might have noticed, we have the City Council's been attacked by some kind of spring cold, and several of our members are suffering from it, particularly Commissioner Fish, who made it in this morning in person but wants to participate this afternoon by telephone. So pursuant to Portland City Code 3.02025, Commissioner Fish is participating by telephone because of illness. The efforts to inform absent council members of their opportunity to do this have been made, and he's taking advantage of that. Do any of the council members who are physically present object to having Commissioner Fish participate by telephone? Assuming none, then he will be included when you call the roll, please, Carla.
Fish.
As soon as the audio connects him.
Fish.
Here. Okay.
Saltzman.
Here.
Novick.
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Hales.
Here. Okay, welcome everyone. Let's take up item number S691.
Adopt new and amended supporting documents for an update of Portland's comprehensive plan, accept report of the Citizen Involvement Committee, and amend certain ordinances.
And go ahead and read 692 while you're at it, please.
Adopt a new comprehensive plan for the City of Portland, Oregon, which replaces and supersedes the comprehensive plan adopted with Ordinance 150580 and amend certain ordinances.
So as we get ready to start with first the presentation and then our action this afternoon, I just want to first take stock of where we are. We've worked for a long time as a city to try to grow intelligently. In many ways, I think we wish we didn't have to grow. And we certainly understand, and the Anti-Displacement Coalition was just downstairs celebrating their good work on this comp plan, but also noting the stresses that come from growth and change. But that's what we're trying to do with a comprehensive plan, is manage change to our purposes with all the tools that we have. And this is really a kind of a once-in-a-generation opportunity that falls to us now to act for the next 20 years, to act on what Portland will be like when we're a city of 850,000 people, which is the population that this plan anticipates 20 years from now, which is a daunting number, but nevertheless one that has driven a lot of very hard work by citizens, by activists, by volunteers, and by city staff. I mentioned earlier, these groups come to study Portland, and there's one here today from Brazil, and they asked, how have you sustained this over time? And I said, one, that as far as I can see, one, we have a shared vision of what the city should be like. We disagree on some of the details, but we have a shared vision about compact, walkable growth, livable neighborhoods, access to parks and nature, equity. We have a vision that we try to put into words and then into documents of what we want Portland to be like. And then we have a very strong tradition of citizen activism that pushes the city, as maybe the Bicycle Transportation Alliance did early on in bicycles, or maybe as the Anti-Displacement Coalition has done in their work on this plan, along with many others. And so if we have a secret sauce in Portland, it's because not just those of us that get to make these decisions, hopefully make them well, but also because we're being driven and pushed and challenged by citizens who care a lot about planning and who know a lot about planning. So that's a blessing of being involved in Portland. And speaking of those citizens, I want to start by thanking the members of our Planning and Sustainability Commission, the most demanding, time-consuming volunteer job in the city. I think bar none. I think even being on the Portland Development Commission board pales in comparison to the hours that these folks put in and the complexity of the work they have to do, and sometimes with great controversy. I remember a hearing about some propane thing where there was a few people there to talk to you, for example. So thank you, Planning and Sustainability Commission members. Thank you, neighborhood leaders from across the neighborhood system in the city who have been deeply involved in this, down to the details of lots and blocks, and then thinking about the big picture of the future of their part of the city. And then certainly I want to thank my colleagues, because we have, as a council, put in a great deal of time on this plan. I think we know that that has been worth it because of how carefully we've tried to shape this plan. And then most of all, Susan and your staff, Susan Anderson and your staff at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, great work. We have the best planners in the country, and they happen to work here in the city. And they worked really hard on this plan, and they care a lot, and you can tell by the sometimes passionate discussions that we have in our offices or here in this room as we work through the plan. But it's always a privilege to work with great people, and we have them in BPS, and I want to thank you all for really dedicated work on this plan. And so with that, let me call Susan and Eric forward and others and tell us what we need to do today to finish the job.
So good afternoon, Mayor Hales, commissioners. Thank you so much. I want to just spend a brief amount of time, 5 minutes, and tell you a little bit about my perspective on the plan, and then say a few thank yous, and then turn it back over to you. You know, when we first set out to develop a new comprehensive plan for the city of Portland, first thing we did was look around the world and see who has done the best plans. What are those plans? What can we look to for inspiration? And what we found were plans around the world that focused on land use and transportation and housing and streets and sewers and all of that. And it was at that point that we decided that Portland's plan should really be flipped 180 degrees, and that we should focus first and foremost on people and create a framework to help people thrive, from East Portland to the West Hills to Portlandia in between. And so that's what we did. We focused on people in all neighborhoods, in all types of businesses, and especially with people who had not traditionally been part of the discussion before. We totally refreshed our public engagement strategy. We broadened our reach. We began to work with people that had not really been a part or had not been inside of this room before, with people of all races, of all incomes, young people, old people, immigrants, small business owners, people with disabilities, and others. And the result of all that work is our new comprehensive plan. So from my perspective, it's a plan that thinks big and focuses small. It's big. It's big with results citywide, looking at new opportunities for housing, for jobs, for affordability, for environmental protection, and more. But it's also small. It's focused down at unique areas and parts of the city, each unique neighborhood, each unique business district, and each unique area that needs protecting, from open space to our prime industrial lands. So as you know, and the mayor just mentioned, one of the primary goals of this comprehensive plan, and really as we work through so many plans in the city, is to have at least 80% of the people by 2035 being able to live in wonderful walkable neighborhoods. And these are neighborhoods with a variety of housing types, strong neighborhood business centers, great transit, bike, pedestrian, you know, all of that. And we talk about it now as if it's just something it's just how we do it. You know, it's just how we do it here in Portland, but it hasn't always been that way. We took our first steps towards this model back 3 decades ago, more than 3 decades ago, with the adoption of the 1980 Comprehensive Plan. It soon became a national and really international model. Many of the things that we love best about our city were set in motion with that plan. And it's amazing, really, the great insight that they had 35 years ago. I'm shortening history here. 35 years ago, and at that time, you know, the city leaders, the community, we paused and took a look at what was happening in Portland and in so many other U.S. cities at that time. People were fleeing, heading to the suburbs. Jobs were heading to the suburbs. Downtown was dead at night. Car was king. You know, it was a different place. And in response, Portland created a plan that really took us in a different direction. And that plan encouraged housing, and it encouraged more businesses downtown in the central city and in our vibrant neighborhood. And so today it's paid off. It's paid off with a couple 100,000 more people since 1980, thousands and thousands of new businesses, and dozens of wonderful, wonderful neighborhoods. So it's been a success. And in fact, as you know, it's been such a success that we're now faced with a whole new set of problems and a whole new set of opportunities. We're popular, and that means there's less affordable housing, and we have more traffic congestion, and there's people and businesses that are being displaced. But that popularity also means that we have a lot more opportunities. We have highly educated people who are starting up companies here. We have more innovation, we have creativity, we have the capacity because of the number of people here and the strength of our community to actually put resources into protecting the environment and creating a low carbon economy. And we have the capacity to be a world-class city. So the new comprehensive plan, it reflects all of these changes and all of these challenges and all of these opportunities. It provides a framework for the next 20 years. The plan will help us increase housing supply and affordability. It will help us reduce the need to drive, protect our natural resources, provide for parks and open space, and ensure that there's land for industry and middle-income jobs. And it also branches out in new directions and in many new issues, things like climate change, environmental justice, and better access to technology, things that weren't at all a part of a plan 35 years ago. So the plan before you today is a plan for the next generation. It continues our great planning legacy, and it literally provides a map to the future that we want to see. And it's for a Portland that's equitable, healthy, and prosperous for everyone. So those are my thoughts sort of in terms of all the work that we've done now over many, many years, pulling this all together from very much the big picture down to the plan we have. And now we go back out. We've been big, and now we're down into the details. I just want to close by saying a few thank yous. First, to my lead staff, Eric. You have been the master of content. Without a doubt, you are the most knowledgeable planner in the city, perhaps in the United States. And I want to thank you for that. It has been amazing. Joe, who is on vacation right now, Joe has been the great mediator. Joe brought people to the table, got them to sit down, got to see their commonalities, and help make good decisions happen. Sally, you always reminded us about the importance of a healthy and working river. Sandra, you always reminded us about the rules and keeping the process straight. Tom, you and your team ensured that we got the demographics and all the facts right. Kevin and Mark, your teams brought the plan to life with illustrations, with maps, with graphics, and all the wonderful details of the map app. Eden and Julia, you got the word out and built relationships with all the reporters in the city, teaching them about the details of the comprehensive plan and what goes into making a great plan. Courtney from PBOT and Marie from BES, we couldn't have done this without you. And finally, Deborah. You and your team, the district liaisons, you have been the eyes and the ears on the ground, and you have truly been the heart and soul of this plan. So thank you. And thank you to the rest of my staff who are now watching all this back in the office. I'm not going to name all of you, but each of you had some specific influence on the shape of the plan, and so you truly will have some influence on the shape of the city for the next 20 years. And then I want to thank really what could be considered our extended staff, people like Linda Nedekoven and others, the couple hundred people who were on committees, and I'm not exaggerating, there were more than 200 or 300 people who were on committees over the past 6 to 8 years, building broad policy and getting down into the details, the policy expert groups, the community involvement committee, and the dozens and dozens of neighborhood land use committees. So thank you all for your insights and your diligence. And finally, I want to thank all of you, my boss and my co-bosses. It's been a long haul, and you listened carefully to hundreds of people at hearings, providing testimony. You spent hours working through the issues at the work sessions. Your staff literally spent weeks and weeks with my staff working on some tough issues, and as we all know, there were some tough issues. You often were required to take a really good idea and balance it with a really good idea and have to make a choice, and that wasn't always easy. So I appreciate that in the end, the decisions that you made together, really, will now be the framework for development in the city for the next 20 years. And I think that's something we can all be proud of. So thank you, especially to you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Eric?
We might want to tell you the details of where we go next.
Just walk us through what we...
Yeah, just
Where we are now.
the technical details of today is to remind you, you're voting on two ordinances. The first adopts the supporting documents, as Carla mentioned in reading the item. That includes the Community Involvement Committee report, the Economic Opportunities Analysis, updates to the buildable lands inventory, growth scenario report, and citywide system plan. The comp plan itself is the separate ordinance, and that includes the policy document, the land use map, the list of significant projects, including portions of the TSP. So that's the two votes you're going to have today on the second reading. And, yeah.
Great. Questions? Concerns? Maybe there aren't any at this point.
So maybe just give us the next big steps in terms of, once we do this today, what are those other little pieces that Susan alluded to?
Sure. As you know, the Planning and Sustainability Commission continues to work through the early implementation of this plan. And so that includes a number of changes to the zoning code and the zoning map that we believe are necessary to put the spirit of the new plan into code and make it effective. That includes updates to the mixed-use commercial zoning, the campus zoning, a number of residential zoning changes, updates to our community involvement program, and further updates to the TSP. So that's happening now. We expect them to make a recommendation to you this summer. And then we've scheduled some placeholders on your calendar this fall to start working through holding hearings at your level on those implementation measures.
And then you might want to just, not just for our benefit, but for those that are, again, engaged in this and thinking about next steps, talk about some of the other planning projects that are going to be scrolling in over the next 6 months, like the residential infill project.
Either way. Well, so we have, as Eric mentioned, the institutional zoning project, and that's coming through. The residential infill project, which is looking at the size of homes, looking at homes that are on smaller lots and how we should be dealing with that, and looking at opportunities for new kinds of housing types within the residential zones that may provide some more opportunities for smaller buildings, ADUs, duplexes, triplexes, and such within our traditional residential communities to allow more people to take advantage of the amazing amenities of many different neighborhoods. Soon after, the Central City Plan, that's beginning to go through. In fact, I think on Monday, we will release the draft of that plan. So everything's moving now. We've had to wait for this to come through. You can't adopt all the other bits until you have this in place first. So Central City Plan and residential infill. We also will be starting, or we will be bringing to you mixed-use zoning plan, looking at our mixed-use zones. So all of that's happening really in the next 6 to 8 months.
The other two I maybe would mention is the residential, multifamily residential project that is also a Metro grant that we'll be initiating in the next 6 months, to similar to how we're overhauling the mixed-use zones to look at our higher density multifamily zones. And then also working with Housing Bureau to move as quickly as we can on the inclusionary housing implementation.
So no rest yet.
Not much.
Great. Okay, questions or any other requests before we take our 2 votes? Then let us do that, please. Second reading on adopting the supporting documents, 691.
Fish?
Well, thank you for allowing me to participate by phone, and I'm going to reserve my formal comment for the next vote. Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Novick?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Hale?
Aye. And then for 692 on the plan itself.
Fish?
Well, first, I want to thank the mayor and Susan for their earlier comments because they basically were everything I wanted to say, but said it more eloquently. This is the first and presumably the last time I will have a chance as a member of council to vote on a comprehensive plan, unless I set some kind of record for service. And it has been a wonderful experience. And at the end, I have a number of people to thank. But I've learned a lot. I think it's fair to say that it's brought out the best in Portland, and I'm proud of the final document. And in terms of the comp plan that we're voting on, I believe that it walks a fine line between preserving the character of our neighborhoods and planning for new neighbors, that it reflects the needs of institutional partners like universities, hospitals, and the Port of Portland, and also reflects the values of our community partners, including housing advocates, older adults, neighborhood leaders, and environmentalists. I believe it thoughtfully plans for both a growing Portland and an aging Portland, with more options for people to age in place, and a focus on neighborhood centers where people can walk, bike, and take public transportation. It keeps an eye on East Portland to help it thoughtfully grow without displacing the longtime residents in Portland's last affordable neighborhoods. And it addresses very thoughtfully two of our most urgent challenges: advancing equity and responding to our housing crisis. I want to begin by thanking my colleagues for what has been a terrific process. And after attending all the meetings and listening carefully, particularly to Commissioner Fritz and Mayor Hales and their questions and comments, I think I'm now ready to get college credit for this experience. Obviously, I want to thank the hundreds and hundreds of community members and groups who showed up to testify or who submitted emails or documents and helped to shape the final product. I think we can say without hesitation that this plan was shaped by the community and reflects the community's values. I want to thank Elders in Action, AARP, Age Friendly Portland, and others for their thoughtful feedback on the case for older adults in connection with middle housing, drive-throughs, and a host of other important issues. I'm grateful to the passionate neighborhood leaders and environmental voices who helped guide our final decisions on issues ranging from the Broadmoor Golf Course, our open space inventory, our river, and holding West Hayden Island harmless. I could not, in my last remarks, resist thanking Joe Rossi, who attended every single hearing.
He's
And
here.
whose good stewardship and community-minded approach will make his property an asset for generations to come. As the mayor has done, I'd like to thank the Planning and Sustainability Commission, who worked so hard and provided us with an excellent draft. And that is one of the hardest assignments that we ask volunteers to take up in our community, and we're very fortunate to have such a talented group. I want to thank our attorneys who, on a number of occasions, helped us steer the stay on the straight and narrow, if you will, and guided some of the final language in this document. Of course, special thanks to Susan and Joe and Eric and all the planners who have done such a wonderful job managing this complicated process, educating the council about the various policy choices, and I think deserve a ton of credit for their work. And I don't remember a more complicated process that we've been a part of. And I've just been amazed at the way they managed it and helped us get to this point. And I hope Susan and Joe and Eric and Deborah and Sally and everyone feels as much pride as we have in their work. And finally, I want to thank Jamie Dunphy on my team, who in the course of this has become a minor expert in planning issues. And he's if I've ever said or done anything during these hearings which is thoughtful or intelligent, it's either a complete mistake or it's completely attributable to material he gave to me. So I'm very proud today to be part of a council that gets to adopt this comprehensive plan, and I think it's a very sound vision for a prosperous, equitable future, and it's a roadmap to a future and a city that I hope to grow old in. And today I'm proud to lend my support for this plan by voting aye.
Councilman?
Well, let me start off by thanking our incredibly engaged community that made this plan what it is today. So many times over the past few years, I've been amazed at the level of knowledge and interest in this plan shown by a diverse array of residents. I'm constantly amazed how many people show up for these hearings and these meetings. The phrase "only in Portland" runs through my mind over and over and over again. I think only in Portland could you generate hundreds of people to talk about some very, at times very arcane, detailed zoning issues. But it shows how much Portlanders do care about the city that we all love. And that, of course, follows into thanking all the planning staff who have been just amazing throughout this process. Susan, Eric, Joe, Deborah, and so many other planners involved. Our city attorneys, Catherine, Lindley, Lauren, Carla, and Sue, our council clerks, have often been amazing as we host these meetings at various locales throughout the city. And all the point people in the council offices who absorbed all the information on behalf of those of us sitting up here at the dais. People like Jamie Dunphy, like Katie, Claire, Matt in my office, Camille. Thank you for all the great work in making our jobs appear easier, make us appear smarter. And finally, and I also can't let the Planning and Sustainability Commission go unthanked either. I mean, the effort that they put into this plan, as they do into this job as serving on the Planning and Sustainability Commission, is truly astounding. I am constantly in awe of the amount of time they invest in issues that are so important to our city. So special thanks to all of those members. Mike Hauk is here in the audience today. Special thanks to Mike. And finally, before I vote, I want to set some markers down for the code packages that are making their way through the Planning and Sustainability Commission and soon to come to us this fall. I think most of you know that I like height. We're a city, and we need to plan for incredible growth. And the incredible growth we will see over the next 20 to 30 years. And a big part of accommodating that growth is to increase the height of our buildings all over Portland. So I think it's a very sound strategy. As I said, I am a supporter of height. Perhaps that's why I like to visit New York City in my spare time. We need more housing, and all height and floor area ratio bonuses should be tied to affordable housing. All of them. This is a huge priority for me, and I will be watching closely to see if any of the bonus programs coming out of the current processes are watered down for affordable housing. I don't like downzoning, as many of my amendments to the plan showed. The last thing we need to do is decrease the density in Portland. And to this end, I strongly support middle housing efforts and the idea of utilizing what has been single-family housing zoning over the past 50 years for more flexible uses like multiple accessory dwelling units or courtyard apartments. I hope the effort around this is fruitful, and I will be a strong supporter on the council when these ideas come to fruition in our zoning code. So finally, let me just say that when I was just starting out in college, I wanted to be a city planner. I had no idea really what a city planner did, but I kind of thought the city planner was like, it's like going over to the second floor of the Portland building, to that hearing room C, where you have that wooden model of the city. And I kind of thought, I want to do that. I want to take this building here and say, this should be over here, or we need to make this space here. That's what I thought city planning was. And, I did a couple internships with what was in Metro, or what was now Metro, what was in the Columbia Region Association of Governments. And I soon found out it's a lot more detailed and a lot more sophisticated than sort of just moving wooden models of buildings around and saying, this is what the city should look like. And all the people in the Bureau of Planning Sustainability have even proved that even further. This job is a lot more complicated than I ever thought, and I was probably never cut out to be a planner anyway. But it helps having colleagues who were, like Commissioner Fritz, Mayor Hales. I think you guys were cut out to be planners from day one. You have a great level of understanding and detail. So it really helped having a couple colleagues that really helped bring maybe I can speak for the other three of us along. And so I just have a lot of respect for the profession and the work, and I look forward to living in this city that I feel I have had some small role in helping to create over this for the next 20 years. And I'm pleased to vote aye.
Novik?
First of all, Commissioner Saltzman, you're not always the most talkative member of the council, and it's a delight to hear you hold forth on this issue very eloquently. I first want to apologize for the fact that I've got a lot to say, and I'm also sick and rather incoherent. So I don't know how understandable what I'm about to say is going to be. So I just want to apologize for that in advance. This comprehensive plan reflects an assumption that we are going to have more housing built and different types of housing built in this city. And that raises concerns for a lot of people. I'd like to talk a bit about the advantages of having some more housing and different types of housing built. The biggest challenge we face as a species, along with a lot of other species who are along for the ride with us, is climate disruption. And surprisingly and counterintuitively, I think, having more compact development helps us reduce our carbon emissions. When you have more people living closer together, for one thing, it makes transit more viable. It makes it easier for people not to drive. The reason the New York City subway system is economically viable is there's a bunch of people per stop. And also, for example, if it takes 7,000 people, I've been told, to support a grocery store. So if 7,000 people are living within walking distance of each other, a grocery store will spring up that people can walk to rather than drive to. The number of people in my neighborhood are concerned about the idea of having more housing in Multnomah Village. I actually would like to have more people living in Multnomah Village because that increases the odds that a grocery store will spring up that I can walk to. The issue that's on the front of a lot of people's minds, I think most people's minds in Portland now, is housing affordability. And lots of people want to move here, including a fair number of people with high incomes. If we don't allow for more housing to be built, those people will keep on bidding up the price of existing housing beyond the capacity of people. A lot of people already live here and more moderate income people who want to move here. But I don't think that there's an unlimited number of high income people that want to move to Portland. So I think if we allow enough housing to be built, we should have room for those high income people and for people with more modest incomes. Let me give you an example. Suppose a couple with kind of an upper middle class income is moving to Portland, and they look at the Inner East Side and they like it and they like to live there, but they discover that given the way housing prices in single family homes have gone up there, they can't afford it, even though they have a pretty decent income. If they don't have another option, they might go and buy a house east of 82nd, thus helping to drive up prices there and contribute to the gentrification of East Portland. But if we make it more feasible to build things like, or convert buildings to duplexes and triplexes in their Inner East Side, that same couple might choose to do that, and then they're not driving up prices and contributing to gentrification in East Portland. Of course, we are going to build some affordable housing with tax dollars. In this budget, we made a major contribution of city funds to building affordable housing. But we are not going to address the overall problem of housing affordability just with taxpayer-funded housing. We're going to have to allow for the market to help. Not incidentally, I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize for something I said in the course of these comp plan discussions. Some folks in Eastmoreland proposed increasing minimum lot sizes in Eastmoreland, and I jokingly said that that would be creating an R1% zone. And a number of people in Eastmoreland took offense, and they reasonably interpreted my remarks as suggesting that everybody in Eastmoreland is in the top 1% and they only want to associate with other 1%ers. And that's not true. The folks proposing that zoning change simply want to preserve their neighborhood. So I apologize. But here's the thing. Eastmoreland is already changing because of rising prices. Many of the people who live in Eastmoreland now would not be able to buy their own homes at current prices. That neighborhood is gradually transitioning from being an upper middle class neighborhood to, yes, in fact, a wealthy neighborhood. And that's happening all over the city. My wife and I make a very good income, but if Zillow is to be believed, the house that we bought in Multnomah Village just 3 years ago would be beyond our reach today. And the concern I had about the proposed downzoning in Eastmoreland is that if we increase minimum lot sizes, I think we're further limiting who can live in parts of Portland to people who can afford big lots. To some extent, there's a conflict between our desire to preserve the look, the physical look of our neighborhoods, and our desire to preserve Portland as a place where people with a wide range of incomes can afford to live, to some extent. But I don't think that conflict has to be a duel to the death. If you walk through the Buckman neighborhood, you see a lot of duplexes and triplexes and garden apartments that fit in well with the single-family homes in the neighborhood. In fact, with some of them, you have to look closely to realize this is a duplex, not a single-family home. That density does not have to be ugly. That's one of the reasons I'm really passionate about allowing for more middle-density housing, because we don't want apartments everywhere, and not everyone wants to live in an apartment, but as the price of single-family homes in this area goes up, I think we need to allow for other options that are compatible with their neighborhoods. A number of other points that I wanted to address, some of which are duplicative of what my colleagues have already said and will say. The anti-displacement provisions we incorporated into the plan are important to ensure we keep Portland open to all. The council supported all the measures proposed by anti-displacement PDX for the final plan. I congratulate them for their effective advocacy. In fact, I just had an opportunity to represent the Spirit of Portland Award to the Anti-Displacement PDX Coalition, which rejected it when we first proposed it because they wanted to see if we actually would incorporate their proposals into the plan. We must keep our focus on displacement. Implementation will be the true test of those policies, and I know that the folks in the Anti-Displacement PDX will come back again and again to keep the pressure on. I'm glad that we adopted the middle cargo forecast and the economic opportunities analysis. I was concerned when we saw the draft plan would use the low cargo forecast because of the signal that could send to harbor businesses that in some cases employ many people in good middle wage jobs. New analysis by staff showed that we could increase capacity on some lands and move the low to the middle cargo forecast. That sets a course for continued investment in the economic engine that is the harbor. I was pleased, I think Commissioner Fish already said this, that we maintained the Planning and Sustainability Commission's recommendation to preserve Broadmoor Golf Course as open space. Broadmoor is a unique ecological resource that should be preserved as habitat. I was pleased that we adopted a transportation strategy that prioritizes design of the right-of-way for pedestrians and cyclists, staying the course we've been on and how we invest in our transportation network. The transportation strategy is critical as our population grows and we're making those investments. We need to make investments in infrastructure that make it safe and easy to walk and bike for short trips, opening up capacity for longer trips by transit and car. And I'm pleased that we prioritized disability accessibility as its own policy in Chapter 9. Thanks to my colleagues for supporting those important policies. And of course, the Bureau of Transportation project list identifies multimodal projects that address the needs of pedestrians, bicyclists, transit users, freight movers, and motorists. The list of investments is needed to maintain existing facilities and ensure the system meets the needs of Portlanders for decades to come. Finally, like my colleagues, I have a long list of people to thank for their participation. Thanks to all of the advocates and community members who took time to testify during this process, in many cases coming to repeated long meetings and waiting until they finally got a chance to speak. And we also received a mountain of written testimony. Thanks for everybody who took the time to weigh in any way. Thanks to my colleagues for their engagement and discourse throughout this process. As Commissioner Fish said, I think we've learned a lot together. Commissioner Saltzman said the same thing. And special thanks to Mayor Charlie Hales for his leadership and vision. I remember reading Charlie Hales' exit interview as a city commissioner at Willamette Week in 2002, where he said that it's important to have people on the council who think about what the city physically looks like. And I'm glad that he came back to lend his vision on how a city should look in this important process. Thank you, Mayor Hales. Thanks to the Planning and Sustainability Commission, especially former Chair Andre Baugh, to Chris Smith for his advocacy for smart transportation planning, as well as open data and digital equity, and to Howard Shapiro for his commitment to the public involvement process. And all of the PSC members served on policy expert groups and were essential in bringing this plan over the finish line. Thanks so much to BPS staff for their calm and consistent leadership on this very big project. Thanks to Susan Anderson, Joe Zinder, Eric Engstrom, and Deborah Stein in particular. And if I weren't sick, I'd come up with some joke about returning to Zender later on, but since I'm sick, I haven't been able to come up with it. Thanks to PBOT staff for their contribution on the TSP and transportation policy notes of this plan, especially Director Treat, Art Pierce, Courtney Duke, Peter Hurley, and Zeph Wagner. And thank you so much to tirelessly to make me understand issues that were far too complicated for my small brain. Congratulations to everybody, and as people have said already, we have a lot of work left to do, but this is a great milestone, and it's an honor to be here with all of you. Aye.
Fritz.
Our speeches are even longer than usual today because this indeed is a milestone for all of us, and it's a huge undertaking that does, as Commissioner Fish said, only happen once in a lifetime or once in a career. So thank you to the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability staff for making the most of your once-in-a-career opportunity to shape Portland until 2035. I'm going to start my remarks by thanking Grandma and Grandpa Fritz. And the reason I'm going to thank them is because 20 years ago, then Commissioner Hales asked me to be on the Planning Commission, and I would not have been able to do that with children ages 6, 8, and 10 if Grandma hadn't come over to watch them so that I could spend hours and hours at the Planning Commission. So I really appreciate that this, for many people, there's a lot of sacrifices that go into the long hours that the staff work, both in the bureaus and in our offices and in the community, that it's not easy to get to public hearings and to take time to send in cogent testimony and to just trust that it might be read, even though you don't know whether it would be or not. And people did, and we did rate it, and we did consider it. One of my formative experiences was when the Metro President Judy Wires said there's no point in having a public hearing if it doesn't matter what the public says when they show up. And certainly when people came and people testified and people sent in their written comments, staff did an amazing job of coordinating it, and we, I think, have done a good job of sifting through it. There are probably some mistakes in this plan. I would think that none of us could be 100% sure we got absolutely 100% of everything right. One of the reasons I find such joy in planning is, for the most part, you can go back and fix things if you discover errors, or if we discover errors. I also want to thank Mayor Tom Potter for doing the Bureau improvement projects, including Community Connect, which is one of the main reasons that we had such a diversity of folks participating in this plan, that all of us in the cities have been thinking over the years of who's not at the table, who needs to be, empowering not only the Anti-Displacement Coalition, but also young people, Coalition of Communities of Color, all kinds of folks who participated in this plan, and the Public Involvement Advisory Committee, who helped with the reshaping of Chapter 2, the Community Engagement chapter, which I'm particularly proud of. I thank Sam Adams for his work on the Portland Plan, and that was 4 years of really hard work too, following on from Mayor Potter's Bureau Improvement Project, and now Mayor Hales with this as the signature achievement, I would postulate, of your administration to bring this comp plan home with 6 months to spare, so we've got plenty more time to do more, right? One of the things that's in it that I most treasure, of course, is protecting West Hayden Island, which I hope we have locked up, and I'm grateful to the voters of Portland to give me another 4 years to be vigilant on that, because that's something that could come back again, and I'm glad that I'll be here to do that. I need to state that I was disappointed that I didn't succeed in one aspect, which is to specify that parking can be a key function of the public right-of-way, particularly in street vacations. And I understand that additional components of the systems development plan, including the glossary and street design classifications, which don't currently have parking listing, will be coming to council this fall, and at that time I will be interested to see parking as an important function of streets and a consideration for street vacations. And I know that we all have a vision for more biking and more walking and less cars in our city, and that's going to be necessary in order to avoid even more congestion and to get the climate action plan goals met. There are many people in our city who live far away from public transportation who cannot use, they don't have bike lanes or sidewalks, and they cannot use those modes of transportation. For them, it would be a privilege to be able to walk and bike to work, and it's a privilege that they don't have. So in the meantime, we must ensure that parking is a consideration, because this is an important equity issue. In addition to all the other thank yous, and I won't repeat them all, I want to thank our park staff, Brett Horner in particular, put a lot of time and effort into this. Office of Neighborhood Involvement, Amalia Alcorn Damaris, and Public Involvement Advisory Committee. Camille Trummer and Jackie Dingfelder on the mayor's staff were absolutely essential in doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes work. My staff, Claire Adamsick and Pooja Bhatt, were absolutely phenomenal. I could not have been better served by my staff, and also by two chiefs of staff, Tom Bazot and Tim Crail, who also have been huge in coordinating all the many changes that we got in this plan to, I believe, make it even better. Thank you so much for all of your work, and thank you to our community for all the work that you've done on this. Aye.
Niels.
Well, Commissioner Fish postulated that he probably won't be involved over a 25-year span in planning work like this, but of course I've already been outed as somebody who actually has. I was here in the early 90s when we were adopting big planning documents, sort of, if you will, trial efforts at what we're doing here today, things like the Albina Community Plan and the Outer Southeast Community Plan and the Southwest Community Plan. And at a time when there's so much negative noise about government, I think it's important to look at our situation here today and realize that progress is possible. You know, there's newspaper editorials that make government look bad. There was one infamous editorial in a local paper that quoted me using the word placemaking in quotes as if it was some airy notion that I'd made up instead of a word that every planner or neighborhood activist understands. We have political candidates who make government look bad and ineffective and feast on that. And of course, we have the Twitterverse where people expect to have things like the comprehensive plan explained in 140 characters, and you just can't. Sorry, I'm not smart enough to be able to do that in 140 characters. So there's, you know, in the background of maybe some of those negative notes, you know, progress really is possible, and that we've gotten better at this, better than we were in the Outer Southeast Plan or the Albina Plan or the Southwest Plan. And we should acknowledge that we've all gotten better at this as we've gone along. And we should remember that it sounds conceited for modest Portlanders to say this, but we're the best. I mean, the whole world comes here to study us. They don't come to all those other cities to study them. They come here. We're the only city that has a first stop, Portland, and the only city that needs one. And when you talk to planners or colleagues in the rest of the country, they say, oh, you're from Portland. Now, they're mostly celebrating what we've done in new urbanism, the ability to take an old rail yard and make it into a neighborhood, or to take the South Waterfront, transform it into a medical research powerhouse and neighborhood at the same time. The ability to figure out these difficult questions of infill and transit and all the rest. But the part of Portland that I always try to remind people about, and it was a very, very big factor for me in this plan, and in the remaining work we will do this year on things like the residential infill project, is that we also need to remember that we're the best for old urbanism. Other cities have a few neighborhoods like Laurelhurst or Arbor Lodge or Eastmoreland or Westmoreland or Ladd. Other cities have a few of those neighborhoods. Thanks to an amazing boom of craftsmanship in the early 20th century, we have a fabric of old urbanism that's unmatched in the country. I've had the chance to work all over the country in my career as a consulting transportation planner, and nobody's got this. We've got it. We'd be crazy to lose it. So the work of historic preservation, which has been partially advanced by this plan, needs to continue to be at the front of our effort. Yes, we need to accommodate density, and we're doing that in this comp plan, but we also need to preserve the great old buildings, perhaps repurpose them, because we're in a big old house that's too big for us. It might be thoughtfully rebuilt into a duplex, but for God's sake, don't lose that built craftsmanship if we can possibly keep it. So that work is ongoing. So we have gotten better at this, and we've gotten better at it because some things that are always good about Portland have been especially good in this process. We've had neighborhood activists that have been deeply involved. Linda, Walter, Stan, others here, you've put a lot of time into this. We've had activists like the Anti-Displacement Coalition or housing activists like Diane Lynn who've been on us the whole way about making sure we get this right. We've had activist planning commission members like Mike Hauk who never let us forget the environment. Between him and Commissioner Fritz, I have no worries about Hayden Island in the future. So we've had people that have really worked hard to make sure that this plan is a good one. And it's just in time. You know, they say that about just-in-time delivery. I think this plan is just-in-time delivery. In a week when we found out that the average housing price has risen above $400,000, when we've gotten the dubious honor of having the fastest year-over-year housing price growth of major cities in the country at 11%, when we have a downtown office vacancy rate that's single digits, and there are small digits at that, you know, we're booming. We had 1,000 people a month move to Portland in the last year. So the need for this plan is acute. We're doing it just in time. And so I'm very, very happy that among the other reasons that I decided to not run for another term was to be able to pour myself into this work, and I have, and I'm glad of it. And then finally, I'm especially glad of not only the other folks that have worked so hard on this, but of being very well advised in my office by a couple people that have already been mentioned. Jackie Dingfelder, who's possibly awake in New Zealand and watching this on her computer, and Camille Trummer, who had the difficult job of not only succeeding Jackie Dingfelder in this work, but also having to work for a planner wonk as mayor. So Camille, you've done wonderfully well and proven yourself as a great planner, and I appreciate your good counsel every step of the way in this plan. Thank you very much. Aye. It's done.
We suspend the rules and class.
Let's suspend the rules. We're recessed for a few minutes. Order and take up the next two items, if you could go ahead and read both of those.
Item 693, update collection and foreclosure code to align to changes in ORS 205 and 223. And 694, foreclosure list report 2016-01.
Well, thank you. I think the whole afternoon council calendar could be described with this combination of words. Hooray, at long last. We finished 7 years of work on the comprehensive plan, and now we're taking up a question that has lingered for some time around our community. So I'm very pleased that we're here and at the team of people in city government, from the auditor's office to the police bureau to ONI to BDS to my office, that have been working so well together. Want to thank a couple of people at the outset. One who's on his honeymoon, Zach Lanoski, and then there he is, Chad Stover from my office, who worked really hard on this. And then Officer Aaron Schmautz from East Precinct, who's still recovering from a very scary car accident, but about 1.25 years ago, took me on a ride along and opened my eyes to the fact that we still had in our city, even in 2015, at what was already a very healthy real estate market and people desperate for affordable housing. Now it's more so. Even then, we still had hundreds of houses of this type that are vacant, abandoned, and toxic for their neighbors. So I'm very glad that we are now focusing on this problem and moving forward on solutions. I had the pleasure of leading a tour last Friday of 5 vacant and abandoned houses that were all within 2 miles of each other in just one neighborhood, Lentz. One of those houses is on the list for foreclosure today. And this house involved the tragic death of a 27-year-old female from a heroin overdose. So it shows that housing that is not really in proper use can also be a dangerous place for people, and including vulnerable people, to live. The issue of vacant and abandoned, or sometimes what we call them zombie homes, has no single solution. But thanks to the hard work of a team of people here at the city, we're dusting off old tools and creating new ones that will help move us forward on this. We are committed to solving this problem. Our fiscal year 16-17 budget includes new positions in the Bureau of Development Services to deal with extremely distressed properties. It includes a new position in the city attorney's office, and now we're going to be acting on new tools, a streamlined plan for foreclosures and receivership. So again, we have 2 main tools before us, and we'll be hearing from our auditor and from others on these tools. First is foreclosure itself. The city has the authority to foreclose on houses that owe the city money for liens on past violations. And so we are bringing today 5 houses scheduled for foreclosure. We also have the option of receivership, which allows the city to petition the court to appoint a housing receiver to temporarily take ownership while a house is repaired and put back out for affordable housing. So I believe that receivership will complement the foreclosure program and work to make sure that no one is gaming the system, but that instead we're getting this housing back out into responsible ownership and affordable use. So these are changes before us today. I'm very glad, again, that we have this before us, I want to call on a series of people to come up and talk about this. First, our auditor and her staff to talk about code changes. I guess our auditor is letting her staff go on her behalf. She was here. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. The first item on the agenda.
Put your name in the record,
Oh,
Sarah.
I'm sorry, Sarah Landis, Chief Deputy City Auditor. The first item on the agenda today is to discuss necessary changes to Portland City Code 530. The intent of these changes are really housekeeping in nature and to align city code with changes to Oregon Revised Statute that set foreclosure regulations at the state level. Just to walk through the changes, the first substantive change comes in 530.020 subsection N, which is changes to the sales price definition. Currently, city code only allows a foreclosure sales price to equal the total of the lien principal, interest, penalties, collection costs, and sales costs. And that means that a property with liens and associated costs would sell for potentially a fraction of the value of the property. Our code was in compliance with state law when it was written. It is no longer in compliance with state law, and so this change would make it so. The second substantive change is, just to go into detail there, the revision would allow for the sales price to be the greater of the amount of lien principal, interest, penalties, collection costs, and sales cost, or 75% of total assessed value. The other major change to the code comes in section 530.170 and is related to the conduct of the foreclosure sale. Again, this change aligns city code with ORS. The proposal here would delete the section that covers multiple acceptable bids, as the new sales price definition allows for a highest bid, so that language is no longer necessary. A new section is added that directs the treasurer to apply proceeds first to pay off the costs of conducting the sale, then to unpaid lien principal, interest, and penalties, then to anyone with a recorded interest in the property, and then to the debtor or the debtor's heirs. Other changes are really housekeeping in nature and meant to clarify or correct details in the code. So we have this as an emergency item to ensure that we're in compliance with state statute prior to a council vote on foreclosure, which is coming up next. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or have Marco Maciel, who's the foreclosure program manager, or Simon Huang, who was the attorney who assisted us with this, answer those questions.
I just have a clarifying question. In 530.120, purchase property by the city, it says that the city may purchase any property on the foreclosure list for the amounts of the lien principal plus interest and penalties. So we can do that before it goes up for sale to the highest bidder. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And then we could sell or give it to a nonprofit or whatever we want to do with it. Is that correct?
Right, we could transfer it to a receiver, right?
I'm not sure of the details of that part of the code, since that occurs after our jurisdiction ends, but I would ask that maybe Simon could
Simon,
answer
you
that
want to come
question.
address that? What is that, how would that particular code provision about city purchase be utilized?
And let me be clear, I'm very happy to see it, because I think that since we're going to such a lot of trouble and since we have such an affordable housing crisis, there's a lot of potentially good uses to rehabbing the properties and putting them back into serviceable use rather than getting demolished and have McMansions built on the site.
Not working? All right, there you go.
Simon Huang, City.
Just to be clear, the code change.
I think maybe you should come and sit at the table.
Yeah,
'cause it's
come
not
up here.
working.
Sorry, Simon. It's just not cooperating.
Just to be clear, the code change really contemplates only the purchase of the property for the lien amount by the city. The change is silent with respect to what the city does with the property afterwards, and that's something that would still need to be developed. So this is really about the the purchasing of the property, and that's also something that aligns with Oregon revised statute.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make that clear because I'm happy to see it.
Thank you. Okay, other questions for Simon or our auditor staff, or Jennifer Cooperman's also here from the treasurer's, our treasurer, so. Okay, thank you very much. We'll stand by. We may have more questions. There are some other folks from city bureaus who've been involved in this issue that I want to call on, both the Police Bureau and the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, I think want to speak to this. And then we want to invite public testimony. I know there's some folks that have been living with this problem who are here with us this afternoon, so come on up, Commander. Who'd like to go first?
Thank you. Commander Dave Hendry, Portland Police Bureau, East Precinct. First of all, I'd just like to thank the mayor and council for hearing about this project today. East Precinct, as we've talked about, the mayor came out about 1.5 years ago and did a ride-along with one of my officers. And he saw firsthand the amount of these homes that we have citywide, but really they have deeply impacted the precinct that I oversee out in East. We have probably 400 properties that flow in and out of ownership and disrepair that our folks are managing. But the ones we're talking about here are the worst of the worst, the ones that have become a constant blight to the neighborhoods, and in often cases have turned into a crime hub where we do see spikes of an increase in property crimes and assaultive behavior and things like that that kind of resonate outside of them. I think one of the frustrating things for our officers is coming to these homes and realizing without having the ability to have somebody who's in charge of these homes to help us with trespass and working through those ordinance pieces, law enforcement officers are oftentimes unable to work through the solution just by ourselves. And I think this program that we're talking about here is exactly what is needed, which is all the city entities working together in order to make our community safer. And I know when I'm talking with the residents, especially who live right next door to these properties, they're very thankful for the work that's being done here. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie.
Mayor, Commissioners, I'm Stephanie Reynolds, the manager of the Crime Prevention Program with the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, and I'm also just really pleased to see this tool coming forward, this set of tools coming forward. This has been, vacant and zombie houses have been on our radar in the Crime Prevention Program for a number of years. Vacant houses have always been challenging, but starting in 2008 with the mortgage crisis, they just became really overwhelming, frankly. The number of them and the severity of them and the difficulty in getting anything done on them. So I'm just really pleased to see that we're going to have some more tools in our toolbox. It's really important. The stress on neighbors of these properties is pretty extreme, and they're just astonished that more can't be done and can't be done faster. So we're just really pleased to see that there are going to be some more options for this.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. And is it Mike, are you going to walk us through the list of who's going to walk us through the list of the houses?
Just have another question for
Okay, sure.
Sarah, if I may. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, good. This is again back on the code for purchase of the property by the city and for the foreclosure sale and the, what's it called? Redemption. So can we have something in administrative rules that says, where it says under B that any person having an interest in the property is given an opportunity to pay the lien in full? Is there somewhere where we can codify or put in administrative rules that the notice is sent in different languages?
We, just this week, received our translation insert to go into those letters. So we will be sending, along with all of our correspondence, a generic in the safe harbor language as a generic if you need help in another language. This is how to get in touch with us.
Okay,
So
and that'll go into both the before the sale and the after sale.
It will go into all of our correspondence.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Good. So, gentlemen, would you like to walk us through or maybe Sarah as well, would like to walk us through the list of properties that's shown in the report? Foreclosure list 2016, number 1. I like the ring, it has a ring to it.
I will start on this. So again, Sarah Landis, City Auditor's Office. With me is Mike Liefeld from Bureau of Development Services and Marco Maciel from the Auditor's Office. We're here today to report on 5 properties that we're recommending for foreclosure. An affirmative council vote today to accept the report will authorize the city treasurer to proceed with foreclosure sale on these properties. The properties on this list are the first batch that have been processed through the mayor's initiative to address vacant and abandoned homes that are significant problems for neighborhoods, a drain on city resources across multiple bureaus, and a waste of housing stock in a city that needs more. Because foreclosure is a very time and resource-intensive effort, and the decision for a government to take property is not one that can or should be entered into lightly, we agreed to come to council with a manageable number of properties for consideration. The foreclosure process will not be a quick fix, nor will it be appropriate for every blighted property with delinquent liens. It is one of many tools that must be applied to address blight, so I hope that even as council moves forward with foreclosures, it continues to look at other options to address these properties as well. Okay. Each of the properties we are presenting today is among the worst of the worst. They are part of the extremely distressed property enforcement program in the Bureau of Development Services. In total, they have 37 liens and owe over $375,000 on those liens. Each has had multiple violations and liens that have been open for a long time, and each represents an opportunity to make progress toward improving livability, health, and safety. Mike, is there anything you'd like to say before we start walking through these individual properties?
Just a few comments. Mike Liefeld, Bureau of Development Services Enforcement Program Manager. We started the Extremely Distressed Property Enforcement Program in BDS in 2011 with a focused attention on these unmaintained abandoned homes that were causing severe livability impacts for neighborhoods. And I think what we're finding is that even after all the resources that we put in, code hearings, vacate orders, demolition orders, resecuring properties, nuisance abatements, 5 years into the program, we still have many of the original properties that are in the same condition. And so we're just really excited about another tool in our enforcement tool chest to try to get some action moving on these properties. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. So the first property is at 7101 Northeast Prescott Street. It has 8 liens, delinquent liens, and the dates of delinquency range from December of 2012 to June of 2015. Total amount owed on the lien is just over $99,000. The ownership is listed as David Tift LLC as the legal owner with Multnomah County at the time we prepared this list. There's apparently been a recent ownership change to Fannie Mae.
What does that mean for the process?
We sent notification to the legal owner as listed on the county records, and so we're fine with that notification. Any ownership issues will be delved into in some detail after the council vote. The title reports will be pulled, and there'll be a lot of effort to contact those folks before a foreclosure sale goes through. And there's plenty of notice given on that too, public notice, and also tracking down the owners.
So one of the next steps is a commercial title report. So we get third-party validation of who the legal owner is. Okay.
But if it's the Federal National Mortgage Association, we know where to find them.
Yes.
Yes, we do. The title has not been conveyed yet to Fannie Mae, and so it's still listed as David Tift.
So if it turns out that it has already gone over, just a delayed in reporting, does that change what we would do?
I don't believe that it should, because your vote today would be just a vote to send this list to the treasurer for foreclosure. The property owner still has from today until the date of the property sale to pay their liens off. And so there's still ample time for that to happen. And then even after the sale, the property owner has that 1-year right of redemption to pay the liens off and redeem the property. So there's plenty of safeguard there. I believe that it shouldn't be a problem for us to vote today, or for you to vote today, to send these to the treasurer.
And that 1-year redemption, does it sit like that for another year then?
Doesn't have to, right?
It doesn't have to, and Mike might be better off addressing this, since BDS would be the lien holder at the point of sale, so they will have to do basic maintenance on the property. But and then if there's a purchaser, there can be arrangements that the redemption rights can be sold or given up, and the purchaser could make improvements on the property, but they would do so at their own risk because of the rights of the original property owner in that redemption period.
Marco Maciel, just to clarify,
the fact that we are foreclosing on the property or you have foreclosed and it is going through the redemption period does not preclude the two parties, the one that's holding the certificate and the still property owner, to reach an agreement between themselves. And, okay, there is a period, a redemption period. I'm willing to give you $2,000 or $5,000 if you give me the right during this period to start working on the property. So the city does not get involved with that, but by law, they can get into a contractual agreement to do that.
Okay. So you want to keep going?
Sure. I'll let Mike talk through the details of this property.
Well, this is one of our original EdPEC cases. This property has been in violation since 2012. On the slide, it notes the magnitude of the violation, over 75 violations cited, 25 fire life safety, 7 health sanitation violations. When we start working these cases, you have to imagine these homes are occupied. They're occupied without basic utilities, water, electricity, causes significant hazards to occupants and surrounding property owners. And I do apologize, these slides cannot replicate the conditions of the property. Even a 5,000 square foot lot with the violations that we have, slides don't do it justice. And I've actually taken out some of the slides that are really, you don't want to see those slides. They'll be kept in our files. So essentially, we have some illegal business operation going on here. We have an illegally occupied structure without basic utilities, and BDS had to proceed to a code hearing to secure a vacate order, which we obtained and then executed to remove folks and secure up the property. What we find with many of these properties is that after we take that action, we secure it up, the problems don't go away. They reoccur, so they're almost chronic. The homes become attractive for folks because they know there's not a responsible party, so it's the city that's maintaining the property. So this slide shows the amount of abatements that we have completed at the property, and they span, consecutive years. 5 separate city abatements done by the city of Portland in 2014, and those abatements do amount to some of the lien costs that were in that total figure on the property.
Is that a swimming pool?
That is a swimming pool, right? And that swimming pool was filled with trash and garbage, and then as the rainfall started, it became even worse. And I think on this one, we had to do a special bid to pump out the water. And in this case, we may have actually boarded over the swimming pool just to try to prevent this type of reoccurrence, so it wouldn't be as bad next time it filled up with water.
Okay, moving on to the next property. This property is at 4112 through 4118 Southeast 91st Avenue. It has 8 liens, and delinquency ranges from June of 2011 to most recently in March of this year. Total amount owed on the liens is $105,000, and the ownership here is Trang Nguyen, and Van Tran. There may be bank involvement or ownership, but we could find no records. We had some contact with folks who said they were representing the bank, or the field inspectors did, but there's been no title transfer that occurred, so the record shows these folks as the owners.
So another original EdPEP case, cited in 2010. The conditions remain, minus most of the nuisance conditions because the city has continually removed those items from the exterior yard area. 63 violations, 17 fire life safety violations, 8 health sanitation violations. No contact, well, I should say we did have contact from the property owner in 2011 and a property owner's relative. After that, there's been no contact from the property owner. We have had sporadic contact from property preservation companies beginning in 2012 and continuing. We've pretty much had some contact from a property preservation company or a financial institution each year, including 2016, with no action. So the violations remain uncorrected. So in this case, another code hearing to secure a vacate order to remove occupants and future occupants. The code hearings officer did determine that this property is an attractive nuisance. What we found at this property is that after the board up, there has been heavy transient activity at the property, which has forced us to resecure the property repeatedly. This is why we get a lot of calls from neighbors, concern about unauthorized folks on the properties, dealings at night, and that's kind of the criminal aspect that can enter into these abandoned properties.
Okay, the next property is at 15803 Southeast Powell Boulevard. It also has 8 liens and has delinquency dates ranging from December of 2009 through June of 2014. Total amount owed on the liens is $96,000. U.S. National Bank foreclosed on the property on February 1st of this year, but the property title has not been conveyed and may have been sold to another servicing company. The owner on record with Multnomah County is Trevor Brown.
This may be the first EdPEP case that we had. This one was dating back to 2009. We had an occupied structure without basic utilities, 34 violations cited, many fire, life safety, health sanitation concerns. This property did not have working or active water service, which was, I can tell you firsthand, was producing health sanitation concerns at the property, which was concerning to the adjacent neighbors. We did secure a vacate order from the code hearings officer, and with Commander Henry's assistance of PPB, we did vacate 9 individuals from the home, from the illegal attic space, from RVs, when we served that vacate order and secured the home. We have had ongoing trespass issues at this property. Once BDS secures a vacate, we essentially hold control of the property about who can access it. We do that to work with individuals who are interested in making repairs. In this particular case, we did provide access agreements to make the necessary repairs. Unfortunately, that access agreement turned into another illegal occupancy, which forced us to re-vacate the property. We've resecured this property a number of times, and the slide shows again the number of nuisance abatements that the city's had to complete.
Hey, folks, please don't interrupt. Go ahead.
The next property on the list is 8515 through 8517 North Portsmouth Avenue. It has 12 liens. Dates of delinquency range from summer of 2009 through February of 2016. Total amount owed on the liens is $66,000, and the owner is Norman Yee.
So this property owner, let me put this in context for you. This property owner, at last count, owns 12 separate properties in the city of Portland, has outstanding liens of over $500,000 owed to the city of Portland. We've received 127 complaints. That's a very large number of complaints for one property ownership. BDS has completed 29 abatements at these properties, and that number continues to grow because we have active cases as of today with more nuisance abatements pending. So at this property on North Portsmouth Avenue, we essentially have had 18 complaint cases at the property since 1992. We do have an active violation case today. The violations range from exterior structural violations to exterior yard violations, overgrown grass, obstructions of the sidewalk, the public right-of-way, illegal dumping or trash and debris on the property. This property had a fire at one point, and so there was damage to the structure that still is uncorrected. This property is also interesting in that BDS took this property to a code hearing in 2012, and the property owner did appear with legal counsel. Through that proceeding, we were able to enter into a stipulated agreement with the property owner for correction of all the violations and future maintenance of the property with agreed penalties if the property went back into violation. Unfortunately, not soon after that stipulated agreement was signed, the property did go back into violation. So the terms of the agreement that the property owner agreed to were not met, and BDS has been completing nuisance abatements at the property ever since then.
The final property on the list is 9120 North Tioga Avenue. It currently has one lien. Dates of delinquency on this lien was January 2014, and the total amount owed is $11,000. And the owner, again, is Norman Yee on this property.
So this property, we've received 10 complaint cases since 1994. We have 2 active cases. One is for property maintenance regarding the conditions of the structure, and the other is a nuisance case for conditions of the exterior yard area. Again, more of the same with unkept yards, obstructions to the right-of-way. The current citations are more significant in that we have determined that there is a hole in the roof, which is excelling the deterioration of the structure. It has essentially been abandoned at this point.
So that, some of these houses have been sporadically inhabited, but this one's not habitable, and by the terms of the code, got a hole in the roof, doesn't have any plumbing, that kind of thing, right?
Yes, all of these with their conditions would have a notice not to occupy. There would be additional penalties for occupying in their current condition.
You're a building inspector, Mike. Are any of these houses salvageable, these 5? I mean, somebody downstream is going to have to make a judgment call. Is this house too far gone and must be demolished? I mean, I realize some of these are probably already subject to demolition orders, so maybe you've already answered that question in some cases. But are any of these houses salvageable in your opinion?
I think some of them are. I mean, on the 2 last properties, we haven't had an interior inspection, so we really don't know the condition. We vet those properties for rehab or demolition at the time of a code hearing, and we try to make that determination at that point because we want to secure that demolition order at that time to be efficient with resources. And in these cases, we have not secured demolition orders. So at the time we did the code hearing, based on the knowledge and the condition of the property, we did feel that perhaps rehab was an option. But the longer they sit in this condition, the worse that condition gets, and the chances of rehab become much more difficult, I would imagine.
Okay.
So the next steps for these particular properties, first, council will vote on whether to foreclose. If that vote is affirmative, then the auditor's office transfers responsibility to the treasurer for the conduct of the foreclosure sale. And as I mentioned earlier, the property owner can pay the amount owed up to the sale date, and after the sale date is conducted, the owner has 1 year of redemption period. And I just wanted to briefly bring up what our next steps are for foreclosure on other properties. The auditor's office, development services, and the treasurer are meeting weekly to prioritize properties for foreclosure, to share information and ensure that we have good communication about the properties. It takes a lot of work to bring these files to fruition and to bring these cases to council, and we want to make sure that we are current on the best information that BDS has, and that BDS is current on the information that we have, to troubleshoot the process and to monitor workload. And then our intent is to have this be the first of many foreclosure lists that we will bring to council as files are completed and a sufficient number of unresolved cases are available. It's been the case with this list. There were many more properties that we had worked up, that Marco had worked up cases for, and we'd gotten fairly far along the process, and something came up to either resolve the issues with that property, a new owner who was making efforts, or the property was going to foreclosure sale through the county or something else. So there are a number of reasons why a property can fall off of what we think as a good candidate for foreclosure, and we want to try to minimize the amount of work that we put into such properties so that we can be most efficient about bringing properties to you.
And am I understanding correctly, all 5 of these have been to the collections committee?
All 5 of these properties have been to the collections committee, that's true.
And you don't have to go back to it, but you had a checklist up earlier, but on your slideshow. But I just want to make sure everybody understands that the properties that will get scrolled up for action by the council on foreclosure are ones that are vacant, abandoned, have a long list of violations, and an unresponsive property owner, right?
That's right.
So if somebody has a rundown house that they're living in, we're not talking about them. If they have a rundown house that they've bought and they're now trying to fix up and they're on some kind of reasonable schedule to get it fixed up, we're not talking about them. We're talking about houses where it's vacant, abandoned, has a whole bunch of violations, and you're not getting your phone calls or letters returned from wherever this owner might be.
That's right.
That's the subset. We're only focusing on that subset of houses. Great. Anything else you all want to add? Any other questions for staff? Great work. Thank you very much. And let's see who's here to speak on this item. Do you have a list? And anyone who's not on the list is free to join them as well.
We have 5 on the list.
Okay?
Will these 3 please come up? Artist, Jesse Spoonberg, and Mary Eng.
Okay, come on up. Go ahead.
I'm an artist, and I am using my constitutional right to speak. Sir, you hired a consulting group called Rosenbaum and Watson. You brought them here to start a public meeting called the Community Oversight Advisory Board. They're selling a product, and they're using people that are traumatized, that have been brutalized by excessive force. Amanda Fritz, Commissioner Amanda Fritz, you were at a meeting on Thursday night where you thanked the COAB, where you thanked the chair. You were not there for the people. You failed the people. You, sir, Charlie Hale's mayor, you failed the people, failed them, and you continue to fail them with your complicity, with your silent complicity. You are failing the people. You owe a man an apology. You owe the whole city an apology for bringing Rosenbaum and Watson, LLP, to brutalize and traumatize a whole group of people. That group reaches out to people that have been brutalized. And we enter that meeting and there's lines of police officers outside of that building. Lines of people, of police inside of an office ready to grab people that are traumatized, speaking about police brutality. Activists getting arrested because they're speaking up, using their First Amendment right to speak. People being censored because they're saying what they want to say. Stay on subject, stay on subject, stay on subject. You're saying this to people that have mental health issues. Shut up. Don't talk. You're about to get excluded. 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 Threat after threat after threat for 3 fucking hours.
Excuse me, you can't use profanity.
I am using my constitutional right to express myself. I am using my First Amendment right to express myself.
You're sorry. Show them a good example.
I am using my First Amendment right to express myself. I am using my First Amendment right to express myself. I am using my First Amendment right to express myself.
Thank you very much. Okay, next. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mary Eng. I'm so grateful and honored to be here to speak about this measure. It's been kind of exciting to me. There's a little known thing don't know about me is that when I was down in paralegal school in Los Angeles City College, I took the 3 necessary courses that would get me in the first door of becoming a real estate agent. So I haven't taken them up on the offer. But another little known fact is that I helped in a squatting operation at the Occupy UBS Bank in Occupy London, which was thrilling and interesting because I got to meet squatting defense lawyers. And what I found out is that after World War II, London was so devastated and so grateful for the United States financial aid to help rebuild in the aftermath of the Nazi incursions, that squatting was liberalized as a measure, as a community response for rebuilding. And I think mischaracterizing all squatters as negative or drug addicts or whatnot kind of fails to see that if we are on a race to the bottom in a fiscal sense, we might turn our eyes towards alternative modalities of rehabilitating buildings or subsidizing constructive real estate projects. But I have about 3 main points, and then I think I'll be done. And I think I can hit those in all 137 of my seconds, especially if I can find my notes. Okay. We got to deal with the slumlords because these are worst case scenario houses. It took years to get them into this dilapidated condition. And I was appalled by the bed bug crisis. The housing management is not done properly. And I worked with the Bet Zedek Legal Defense Fund that had worked on Holocaust reparations for one of my lawsuits against one of my slumlords in Hollywood, California. So you got to understand that there are good people in housing defense who could give us some appropriate reaction to Portland's anti-peasant attitude towards the peasants. And then we've got the Wall Street trading of these properties as they go on the market in this new initial public offering type stuff or whatever it is where they're trading our property values. It's keeping the rents really jacked up, and we know that, so don't act like we don't know that. And then having a neo-Nazi attending an eviction is really hard on Jewish eviction defense type people, but I'm enjoying this because I don't like mold, and I don't like bed bugs, and I don't like cockroaches, which I heard they weren't allowed in the Northwest, but I moved into a property where I eventually got the fire chief in on it. My landlord committed suicide because I made a report to the fire chief. She was possibly having her own mental crisis, her own drug addiction, and there's a lot going on there before we get to this worst case scenario. But I appreciate the legal education. I found it enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, guys. At first, I was just going to, my name is Jesse Spomberg. Nice to see you guys, Commissioner. You okay, Commissioner? You don't look so good.
Hi, Barrett.
And you got a cold. Joke. I just want to say thank you guys for initiating, I don't come up and say thank you a lot, for initiating this process to deal with these foreclosures. My only concern is, as I was listening to this, when I first came, I was really excited. A year to give these people, it's been about 10, 11 months since we sat here in these same exact seats and had, the declaration of a housing crisis. And, within that year, you're going to be gone. And I just would hate to see this awesome promise turn into another toothless tiger. We still don't have a solution to the homeless. We've targeted 5 houses, and while that looks good on paper and it looks good in the newspaper, I just really urge you guys. I know you're going to be here for the next 50 years, so, but the rest of you guys might not be. So with that said, thank you, and I'd like to give Laura my last 2 minutes.
I think we're stuck with, I think you can't give you minutes because everybody gets 3.
I just want to see you guys jump.
I think we're stuck with the 1 year. That's not something that we've decided. I think that's in is that state law or our code? State law. So there's legal structure around us that some of which we can flex and some of which we can't. But I think the 1 year redemption is in state law. We should check that.
Well, I also noticed that you guys, that nice woman that sat here, wasn't even sure who owned a couple of the houses, so it's good that we're going to have a vote. It's symbolic. We do this every once in a while.
Well, it's not symbolic. If we take them forward into foreclosure, and we proceed to foreclose to the treasurer's office, that's real. They'll get us foreclosure notice, and it will be sold.
Even the ones that have gone to Fannie Mae, national
Fannie Mae is
organizations.
just another
A
owner.
criminal organization, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I thought so.
They're just another
So
owner.
are you into
Hang on
organized
a second,
crime?
let me answer his question. They're just another owner as far as the
It's
foreclosure.
okay to have
It
a
could be a
conversation
bank,
with
it
the
could
man,
be
but-
Fannie Mae, it could be Fred and Mary, it could be anybody. Okay. All right, thank you.
I was born that way.
I like the way that he acknowledges you and your conversation and what you have to say.
Thank you.
hardly even look at me when I'm having a
He had a question.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Okay, let me add one thing. I watched that COAB video from the other day. That's an embarrassment all around. Everybody who participated in that should be a tiny bit embarrassed. That's all I'm going to say. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. Okay, next, please.
And the next 2 are Robert West and Steve Voiles.
Okay, Mr. West, you're next.
Okay.
My name is Robert West. I'm with Foote Police 911. And me, of course, I'm going to use my First Amendment rights too. And I'm going to say that the co-op thing was a straight joke. It was a straight fuck up.
Hey, please, not here.
And that city council as a whole should be ashamed of what happened. They should be ashamed of the co-op leadership. And everyone that was there was just, all the leadership in there should be ashamed of themselves. I think Amanda Fritz made it even more fucked up.
Hey, please, I'm going to exclude you if you use profanity in here again. That's it.
First Amendment right.
No, it isn't. Not here.
This is First Amendment
Not when it's on television, lady. Go ahead.
Uphold the Constitution of the United States.
Go ahead.
And
Uphold the Constitution
and
of the
I
United
look at it this way. It was a straight fuck up from the
All
beginning.
right, you're excluded, sir. You're done. Turn off the microphones. I warned you.
I'm going.
Rosenbaum and Watson.
Let's resume the meeting, and let me warn anyone else here, if you interrupt, you'll be excluded. Sir, you're here to speak on this issue, I believe. I'd like to give you a chance to speak on this issue. Please go ahead. You're a neighbor of one of these houses, I believe.
Takes two to push someone around, huh?
Go ahead.
Thanks. My name is Steve Voiles. I'm a neighbor of three of the houses that were on the tour. I just want to say thanks for starting the process. I too am a little concerned about the 1 year deal where people can receive the house again. It seems like they've had an opportunity, but aside all that, it's been a huge impact on the neighborhood. Frankly, my wife and I worked very hard to have the house we do have. Frankly, didn't know I was going to be involved in such exciting company here.
Yeah, sorry, welcome to our world.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been a huge impact. My neighbors and I, we believe that community starts local, in our own block, so we take care of each other, look out for each other. The problem though comes into where we can only go so far, and where we need to get police involved or BDS involved to take action. But again, I appreciate all the help that we can get. So.
Thank you. We appreciate you being an advocate for this, and we're glad that we're finally getting to the house, well, at least one of the houses on your block.
Yeah.
More to come.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Charles Johnson, and I was very glad to see that in today's discussion, you spoke vigorously about taking care of these properties, no matter what the ownership records may indicate, because there's sometimes procedural and technical glitches. We know that the county was engaged in a $1 million+ lawsuit related to robo-processing of mortgages and stuff like that. There was some settlement there, so maybe there's room for, sometimes I think I hear the words intergovernmental agreement, but we know that this issue is not limited to within the city limits of Portland. I was glad to see that one of the earlier speakers who I think was able to abstain from profanity was a participant in one of our recent circuit court cases, 16 LT 05254. That was a case against the Federal National Mortgage Association, which, we as citizens need to continue to pressure that organization to do its primary mission of housing first. Secondly, worry about the technical details of evicting people. First, worry about sheltering people. We've talked before in this council about how, since the Reagan administration, our government has not really done what it should do about assisting people in financial distress. I do want to say that even though there's been some profanity here, there are important issues about people with mental health and trauma, and the police department, those employees in the police department are subject to having to hear the F word under a constitutional rule. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Children hearing this on television might not want to be subjected to it. Welcome, Lightning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Watchdog PDX. I'm completely against proceeding forward with the foreclosures. You didn't do a foreclosure since 1971. It was due to a sidewalk, maybe $500. You foreclosed on that property. They turned back around you and sued you for the value of their house. You did a payout of $18,000. Learn from your mistakes. When you begin to foreclose on these properties, you're going to get sued. You're going to be challenged based upon the Constitution. These property owners have property rights. They own the properties. And when you start coming in and saying that you have a right to buy that property before it even goes into the foreclosure process to get fair market value for these property owners, you are not impartial on that sale. You are stepping in, bringing in nuisance fines, fees, violations, garbage. Well, look at the pictures up there. You're not picking up too much garbage, but you sure are finding these owners, these property owners who may have mental illness, may have maybe elderly people, may have numerous problems that we're not bringing to it, this group to attention at this time, and you are moving in as a vulture to the most vulnerable people in this city who do not want to lose their homes. And whether they're there or not, they're in somebody's name. It is their property. Now, again, issue number 2, your main primary focus is to protect the interest of the public, to go in there, be reasonable, negotiate with them to help fix up these properties. And by the way, when you go into these properties, instead of you trying to exercise the right to pull this property out from underneath these property owners using your nuisance liens, which I consider almost unconstitutional, and I will love to challenge you on every one of these cases in court, and I want to have attorneys lined up to challenge you on these cases, because point blank, you're talking about people being removed out of their homes, losing their properties, rent control, this and that. Well, what do you think you're doing right now by throwing out fees on these people and then trying to take their home at a discount and they can't do anything about it? Well, guess what? You think you have activists out there for rent control. You haven't seen anything yet on this foreclosure proceeding as of this evening. You didn't foreclose since 1971. Quit being greedy because you couldn't get your tax pushed through and you wanted that extra $12 million, and you've calculated on these liens as well as I have. There's about $10 to $20 million worth of valuations on liens on overall properties that you want that money. Well, guess what? You're not going to get that money. You're not going to get these people to walk away from these properties. You're not going to get these people to just give them away to you to exercise first right to purchase these property based upon nuisances. It's not going to happen this day and age. Property ownership means something to people, and I'll guarantee you when we have conversations with these owners, they're not going to be happy about this process at all. In City Hall, to sit back like vultures waiting to take these properties from the most vulnerable people in this city, who are in their homes or want to keep these homes to maybe give to their kids in the future. That's their business, what they want to do with these properties. But for you to think you can take these properties out from under them, it's not going to happen. It's going to be challenged by the ACLU, and it'll be challenged by half of this city that care about the most vulnerable people. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else like to speak? Come on up.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
My name is Sally Bowman.
Get a little closer to the mic,
Oh,
please.
sorry. If I can get this chair to go forward. My name is Sally Bowman, and I have been very involved in this process. I live next door to a home that was considered a zombie home, and also there's one next door to that that was also considered a nuisance home. And living near one of these homes is very distressing to the neighbors. It brings in a lot of crime to your neighborhood, and it makes it a lot less safe for the people who live near the home. I tried very desperately to get a hold of the owner, the bank, somebody who was in charge of the house, and I would like to respond just a tiny bit to the person previous to me. It's going to be hard for him to find the owner of these homes. A lot of people have tried to find them. If you can find that person, I'm sure that the city would not have a problem with them taking responsibility for these houses and taking care of the problem. And I mean, even if they didn't pay the liens, if they were taking care of the problem that's causing the liens, then there wouldn't be this issue in the first place. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart and from all of my neighbors who couldn't be here for doing something about this problem that's just really close to my heart.
Thank you. Thanks for being patient.
Thanks for taking the time to come down.
Okay. Anyone else? Then I think we're ready to take action on the first item unless there are any further questions for staff from the council. So the first item is the emergency ordinance and the second is a report.
So I just had one question, which I think is relevant. The owners of these properties have all been notified of today's hearing. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. I see heads nodding, that from those who know.
To the extent that we could find owners,
To the
they
extent
have
you
been
can find them. Okay.
notified.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so let's go ahead and take a vote, please.
Salzman.
This is the emergency ordinance.
The ordinance on the code changes.
I really want to thank Mayor Hales and the Auditor's Office for bringing these code changes forward. They're long overdue. And I think to people that think that what we're doing is throwing families out of their houses, nothing could be further from the truth. These houses are abandoned. They are not in habitable conditions. They have no water. They have no electricity, garbage piled up. So to evoke the image of a family being thrown out of their house is, nothing could be further from the truth. These are putting this.
Don't interrupt, please. Lightning, you know the rules. No interruptions, please.
These properties need to be put into the hands of families. They need to be put in the hands of families who are going to work hard to be good neighbors and to be very responsive to their neighbors and restore these homes to family ownership. So I'm very pleased to support this ordinance. Aye.
Novak?
Aye.
Well, thank you to Auditor Mary Hel Caballero and Deputy Chief Auditor Sarah Landis and your whole team for your good work on this, and thank you, Mayor, for pushing this issue. It is, as we heard from our last speaker, it's really challenging for neighbors, and they have a right to their property rights as well. And so thank you. Thank you very much. Aye.
Hales.
So this isn't an abstract issue for me. I've walked through some of these houses, and I've talked to neighbors like Sally that have had to deal with this. And again, to all of you who've had to put up with this while the city got its act together, my apologies for the delay. Of course, there's a property right. Of course, there are multiple property rights. There's also a responsibility of property ownership to your neighbors. It's elementary, and it's obvious that you can't be dumping your problems on your neighbors. Now, let's talk about who our neighbors are in this case. They are absentee owners who don't live in these homes, who haven't lived in these homes for a long time, if they ever did. And what they are doing is cynically manipulating the system and the real estate market to enjoy the rise of property values, but leave the problems to the city and to their neighbors. So it is really a necessity, Lightning, thank you. It's a necessity that you take care of your property. And in this real estate market, it's quite possible to do so. Ma'am, you don't get to interrupt in this chamber, and the next time you're here, if you interrupt, you'll be excluded. So this is the right thing to do, and I really appreciate the good work that's gone into this. I want to thank our auditor and her staff. They've really rolled up their sleeves and figured this out. They do good work every day, but this is above and beyond. Thank you. Mike Liefeld and the others at BDS who are out there in the field dealing with these houses. I hope you feel that some help is finally on the way for the good work that you do. Commander Hendry and the folks at East Precinct and everybody else in the Police Bureau that ended up being property managers as part of their job, I could sense the relief in them that the city is finally going to act in this case. So again, I want to emphasize what we're not doing. There are no homeowners that are going to be evicted because of this program. There are no renters that are going to be evicted because of this program. There are empty houses with boards over the windows, or in some cases, boards that have been pried off repeatedly, and toxic situations, both for the people that have, in some cases, squatted in these homes who need better shelter than this, and for the neighbors who had to put up with all the side effects. So this is the right thing to do. It's been a long time coming. I'm really proud that Portland has gotten to this day, and I'm really happy to process the first of these changes. Aye. And then a motion, please, on the report.
Move adoption of the report.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Salzman.
I also wanted to thank, in addition to the mayor and the auditor's office, Portland Police Bureau and Bureau of Development Services for the great work they've done in getting us to this point today. Aye.
Novak.
Thank you to the Police Bureau, to BDS, and to the Auditor's Office very much. Aye.
And thank you to Stephanie Reynolds and our team with the Office of Neighborhood Involvement's Crime Prevention Specialists. You try to mediate between neighbors and to get to successful conclusions, and indeed are sometimes the glue between development services, police, and other services. So thank you very much for that. Also, thanks to Mike Leafield, who I know from my being in charge of development services, cares passionately about this issue and has been working on it for a very long time. So thank you very much. And again, thanks to Jasmine Wadsworth on my staff, who was on the collections committee and asked some very careful questions about whether people had received notice in different languages and whether they had truly understood what their property rights are. Good job. Aye.
I'm going to embarrass someone, but there are times in this business when you like to be proven wrong, and I haven't asked him, but I think Simon Wong is happy to be proven wrong today, because I understand that at one point he might have told Chad Stover in a conversation, "We'll never foreclose on houses." Glad you're wrong. I think you are too. Aye. Thank you all very much, and we're adjourned until tomorrow. Good work.